minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to all this morning. I am your host Hajra Satti and joining me is my wonderful co-host who happens to be Fahim Bangesh. Assalamu alaikum Fahim and Eid Ul Azha Mubarak to you and everyone who is celebrating out there.
Walaikum assalam, Eid Ul Azha Mubarak to you as well. And you know, Hajra, the beauty about Eid Ul Azha is no matter how tired or sleepy you are, because obviously this is the busy Eid as we call it, you have to do a lot of work. So, but still, you know, the happiness and the joy of getting up, waking up and being together and uniting with your family, wearing new clothes, and I think that's a joy and unity that hasn't changed since my childhood, because that's how I felt then, that's how I feel now.
Right, and I think this is the third day of the Eid Ul Azha. Of course, we are celebrating here today on the PTV world, and no one can deny the symbolic significance and the importance that Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam did when he, in a blind devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he got that dream where he interpreted that Allah wants to sacrifice his son, and that was his test and tribulation, right? And that is why he is so near and proximate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where in this selfless act of devotion, he was ready to sacrifice his son. And not just that, his son was even ready to give his life for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is the beauty of these blessed souls and that symbolic significance. We observe this beautiful Eid Ul Azha, and obviously it's a very meaty sort of an Eid in a sense that, you know, there's a set percentage of the meat that we have to distribute after the sacrifice, and this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ensured that the process of circulations of protein and carbs remain in the society. And that is why I love the concept of that Islam inculcates, particularly among its followers, amongst its adherents, of the devotion. And not just that, it also caters to the spiritual, physical and communitarian needs of the society. But obviously we are going to have this conversation. We will develop and delve into the concept of Qurbani, of Isar, of the spirit, of the zeal, of sacrifice, what it is mean to us, and usually what exactly the third day of the Eid entails for particularly us and for our guests in our studio. So without any further ado, we are very glad that we have been joined by Amin Kunjahi Saab, who has a profound interest in the literature, and he has also authored many books. So, Assalamu alaikum sir, thank you so much for coming to our show, and Eid Mubarak to you.
Eid Mubarak and Walaikum Salam, and you both people are introducing our very religious and a traditional cultural occasion. We have two main Islamic occasions. One is Eid Ul Fitr and second is Eid Ul Duha.
Yes.
And this Eid Ul Duha is, you said about as a meaty, but it's also a salty too.
Right, and obviously we will develop and further delve into this conversation, but we also would like to introduce the two of other guests who are sitting in the studio and who has graced us with their presence. Without any further ado, I'm very glad that we have been joined by Ms. Roma Shayad. She happens to be a clinical psychologist. Assalamu alaikum Roma, and thank you so much for once again coming to our show.
Thank you for having me.
Eid Mubarak to you.
Khair Mubarak. Thank you.
And joining Ms. Roma, we are very glad that we have been joined by Abdul Wahab Saab, who is a regular on our show. He contributes immensely to our screen, and he happens to be the United Nations Public Information Officer. Assalamu alaikum Abdul Wahab Saab, and Eid Mubarak to you.
Walaikum Salam. Thank you so much for inviting me, and aapko bhi bahut Eid Mubarak.
Jazakallah, Khair Mubarak. It's a pleasure having all of you here in the studios.
Thank you so much.
Now, sir, starting off with you, before we delve into deeper conversations, I would like to ask you what you feel about Eid-e-Isar, or what you feel about this particular Eid, because this is a tad different from Eid al-Fitr. Eid al-Fitr is all about, you know, spreading joy, spreading happiness. This is more about the physical aspect, the spiritual aspect, food and sacrifice.
Yes, so one thing I told you, Fahim, this is the very important rukn of our religious al-Hajj.
Yeah.
And our Prophet says, if someone have the istatat, I want to use this word especially.
Capacity, yes.
Capacity,
Means,
yes, to perform Hajj and sacrifice the all these the capacities and the rukns of Hajj, and the the peoples could not do Hajj, they can stay back and sacrifice the
sacrificial animal
animals like goat and cows and camels. This is the meaning that Hazrat Ibrahim shows us the capacity of Isar for his God.
Yeah.
Because he is the person who knows nothing about from very first day when he thinks he was with Azar, his father or his uncle, and the people he think about well, this is a sun, maybe this is a goat, and then sunset, moon rises, and he thinks, well, moon is maybe the god.
Right.
And these things are going and going, but in the end, when he knows and God give him the message through the messenger, he knows the true Islamic and Muslim spirit.
True.
And then when he saw the dream, in his dream, God says, sacrifice your precious thing. He thinks, well, it's 100 camels. He sacrifices. But again dream comes and he did not understand. In the end, at the third time, he thinks, and then he go to his son Ismail, and he says, my son, I have this kind of feelings. I think my precious thing is a Jew. I just want to sacrifice Jew. And his son says, okay, Papa, let's go.
Right. And I think this is the spirit of Eid Ul Azha, and that is why the case of Hazrat Ibrahim is very interesting, because he is called Khalilullah, right? And that is the meaning of that Khalilullah is that he is the friend of Allah, and this is a title that Allah has not bestowed on anyone, and he is also known as the father of the faith, because all three monotheistic traditions are related to Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam. So now let's move forward this conversation to Ms. Roma. So Ms. Roma, we all know that why we celebrate Eid Ul Azha. It's a symbolic devotion to Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, and in the remembrance of that great sacrifice, right? And obviously he was a messenger, he was a guide, and his devotion, we cannot reach that level because he was the prophet, right? But if we think and reflect upon the modern societies as a psychologist, do you still feel we have that spirit of Qurbani, of Isar, of Jazba, particularly in this age where the shift is there's a focus away from, you know, very individualistic values as compared to very communitarian values that Islam espouses in us? So what's your opinion on that?
That's true. So you see, considering the story behind it, like Saramin very beautifully narrated it, I think it's in today's time, things have been changed a lot. And you wouldn't believe me when I say this, that most of my patients in my practice, the mental health clients that I get, especially during Eid, and let me tell you, we don't even get days off during Eid because for a number of reasons associated with mental health, obviously. Just very recently, I got a call from one of my clients. So they sort of like, you know, arranged everything for the Qurbani, but turned out that because of the social pressure that they had, they were doing that. They didn't have those means to do it, but they were doing it just so that, you know, people around them could say, oh, they did something. Like, you know, we have this thing in us, ke log kya kahenge.
That's true.
And just
This is
for,
the main
yes.
thing,
And considering that, there are quite a lot of things that we do, which are sort of like, you know, out of our capacities. They do involve financial stressors, and which lead to sort of like, you know, fulfilling expectations of the social norms and the society. And because of that, you know, it again, in return, that leads to mental health problems. So I do want to sort of like, you know, talk about that. Don't sort of like force yourself to do things that you cannot afford.
Right.
Don't follow those sort of like traditions. I mean, it's good to follow traditions that, you know, Eid Ul Azha is a beautiful event, but in you don't have to fulfill the expectations of the people around you. Like, you know, a simple cup of tea would be fine if you are in a good mental health and you have your loved ones and people who support you around you.
That's true. That's true. Totally agree. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's more important. And if we have that true spirit, then, you know, nothing can change that.
And that is why, because Amin Saab used a very beautiful word to connote this particular idea of istitat, right? Which means, for the lack of better word in English, the capacity. So if you have the means and capacity, then go ahead. Do not pressurize yourself, because Allah is aware of what we conceal in our chest, right? So Abdul Wahab Saab, now let's move forward to you. And like Roma mentioned, so we have so much psychological pressures, we have so much societal pressures over us, right? How can we hearken back to that same spirit of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam that he displayed when he was ready to sacrifice his own beautiful son for the sake of Allah?
That's great, Hajra. You have put a very beautiful question. The problem is, these days, the sacrifice we are doing on Eid Ul Adha is only symbolic. It lacks true religiosity.
Yes.
What is happening, I mean, we are just copying each other. We are having a mad race for buying the most expensive animal. We are displaying cows, bulls, goats, camels in markets, like perhaps we are going to bid for them, and we are going to show in the society that we are the richest people and we can do that. Basically, I mean, this is because of we have stopped learning and knowing our own religion. Ask people what Eid Ul Adha is about, people won't be knowing. They do not know that Eid Ul Adha is in the observance of the great unprecedented sacrifice by both father and son, right? What was that about? For unlimited total subjugation to the will of God. When God orders something, I mean, no discussion, no further discussion. We simply have to copy that, we have to implement that. But what is happening? God has ordered those who take interest, they are fighting against me. What we have done? Our society is based on trust, but we feel pleasure. We think that, I mean, after Eid Ul Adha, we will be the most pious people on earth. At the same time, another aspect of Eid Ul Adha is this Eid Kurma, you slaughter whatever animal, it is not meant to be eaten by you only.
Yes.
There have to be 3 equal distribution of pieces. What we are doing, we take out, you know, major limbs like thighs, and we take them to restaurants for barbecue. What we are distributing, we're trying to, I mean, select inferior quality of meat for distribution. At the same time, our intent, niya, that has to be, I mean, we have to please God, because we are subjugating to the will of God. God wants sacrifice from us, sacrifice for the whole society, sacrifice for our family, sacrifice for everything.
Actually, Wahab sir, I totally agree with you, because we do see that after every Eid Ul Azha, this has now become a trend that we do see on social media, on conventional media, people coming in and the reporters going on and interviewing people who got the most expensive bull in the market.
Exactly.
Right? And then they'll show the bull, they'll show the buyer, they'll show the seller.
And media is encouraging that. Every day, whichever channel you switch to, they are showing which is the most expensive bull in the market in Pakistan, right? How the people have fed that a particular bull or a goat. They have spent perhaps thousands of rupees, you know, to feed them for last 2 years.
Yes.
Basically, I mean, they are putting people in inferiority complexes that we are not rich enough to enter that rat race for buying most expensive animals.
And
So-
I think you raised a very important point, and let's build the conversation on that, because Abdul Wahab Sahab said that when Allah orders you something, there are no ifs and buts. In the history, we see that there was an entity who gave his own opinion, and he was the Iblis particularly, because he was so pious that he had attained that status of angel, although he was a jinn. And he said, okay, when Allah ordered him to bow before the Adam, so he said that I am made from the fire and Adam is made from the soil, right? He said, it is my opinion that I am not going to do that, right? So when Allah orders you to do something, there are no ifs and buts. There is no my opinion or your opinion. So Kunjai Sahab, now let's come back and have this conversation. And do you still think that we have that, you know, that spirit of my opinion is better than that person's opinion, or particularly we have this capacity that where we na'uzubillah are relegating the commandments of God to our opinions, and particularly when we talk
And
about
becoming
social
a tad
media.
arrogant, perhaps?
Yes.
One, I think you told that na'uzubillah, not we are relegating the God's orders, and we said Wahab, a very nice thing. This is a rat race. Because it's a marketing. Everybody is in a inferiority complex. If I am a middle class person, I have no money enough to buy a very good animal for sacrifice, and my neighbor have a very good well off, and he got a bull over 200,000 rupees, and my children are feeling complex.
Left out, yes.
But Allah says, innamal amalu binniyat. This is depend upon our niyah,
Intentions, yes.
intentions from the inner soul. But we, unfortunately, we people are afraid from the peoples, and therefore we do things for them.
For them and not for
Okay,
Allah.
not for
subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Allah's sake. This is the main problem in our society now, because we are rounded, branded glasses
True.
everywhere.
true.
I hope so. You also wear a branded coat. I also have a branded shirt. This is the main problem. That's why the main Islamic spirit is vanishing from our souls, and this is not a, this is alarming situation in our society now.
True.
That's actually very true, and that raises again quite a pertinent issue. And being a psychologist, Roma, how would you analyze the mentality and the psyche of the society as a whole if we talk about it? Because often what happens is that a person who has not bought an animal of so and so price, they will quote that price just so they become more superior in the eyes of their neighbors, in the eyes of their friends. Again, that spirit is lost. So what does that tell you about the psyche of the society as a whole?
Again, a very good question. I'm glad you brought this up. See, I think religion is beautiful. I want to sort of like, you know, add some religious context to it.
Sure.
It's beautiful, and if we follow religion the way it's given to us, I think that can save us from a lot of mental health problems at the same time. Just like Sarameen said that, you know, the qurbani, the animal that we get, it depends, it's all like, it's on our intentions, it's basically our niyat that counts. It's not how expensive it is. And if people start to understand this thing, just imagine how easy life would be for everybody. You know, for example, if somebody is like, again, you know, I have a lot of examples from my personal practice that I can quote right now. Just like on the first day of Eid, one of my clients who's only 18 years old, he calls me up, and so having a history of major depression and, you know, extremely suicidal at times, he calls me up and he tells me that, so my cousin from my dad's side, they got an animal who is like, quoting the price above 300,000, and my dad, we only got 2 animals, which is like below 100,000. I mean, that for an 18 years old, that is something which it is surprising, but you see the competition, you see the sort of like we are in a constant race, right? And not just us, like everybody around us. I think all Muslims are in a race
True.
when it comes to Eid Ul Azha. So when it comes to mental health, so definitely it does gets you more depressed, more anxious. There is a fear and uncertainty regarding the future when we focus more on the price and less on our intentions, right? So I think that's number one. That's one thing that we need to start improving on, not just like individually, but as a society, how not to compare ourselves with other people around us, because everybody is going through a different sort of like a battle, and we don't know how bad their battle is as compared to ours. So I think it's important to just contribute the minimum that you can, and that's it. Just mind your own business, and it's more like he said, it's more about intentions.
And thank you so much for saying that, because at the end of the day, your qurbani, your sacrifice has to be accepted by the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if your intention is to just show off in the pomposity and to seek validation from others, not from Allah, so I think that's a real problem, and this is a fallacy that we need to address. But obviously we are going to develop this conversation further after a short break. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to World This Morning with Hajar Safi and Fahim Bangish. We were talking about the spirit of Eid Ul Azha with our esteemed guests here. And moving on to Wahab Saab now. Wahab Saab, since we're talking about overall society, we as a society, right? You have motivated a lot of people. You have given a lot of speeches. And I'm sure many of your speeches have changed many lives. Have you ever covered this particular topic? I mean, we as a society, where are we heading towards? We as a society are called the followers of Islam, followers of a particular religion, but we don't show that in our actions. Again, like Ms. Roma also previously mentioned, that had it been so that we would have been following the true teachings of the religion, perhaps we would not be so disoriented or depressed or moving towards mental deterioration as far as the health is concerned. What would you say?
And there's a diffusion of modernism into the Islam, right?
Yeah.
Which
Yes.
is very problematic.
Thank
right?
you, thank you, exactly.
Yeah. Roma has really given a very right example, and you both have raised very pertinent issues. Well, we have to juxtapose modernity with Islam. Islam is an ever evolving religion. Islam is not stagnant at all. Many people wrongly define Islam as an orthodox primitive religion, which it is not.
True.
The thing is, I mean, due to moral degeneration and degradation over last couple of decades, we have really stopped following Islam. We call ourselves Muslims, but the Islam which we follow, that's our own desires, our own ambitions, our own complexes. Islam teaches us to lead a simple life. Opposite to us is Europe, West, which has adopted the teachings of Islam. They prefer to be simple, and they are best not only, whatever faith they follow, right? They really believe in that, and they act on the principles of their religion. How? They speak truth. They don't tell lies. They never adulterate in girls. Their medicines are not fake. They themselves are not fake. Whatever they commit, whatever they promise, they fulfill the promise. They do not show to others what they are not. Whereas we are following Islam only, it's a lip service merely, right? Islam asks us to be very simple, lead a very simple life, eat simple food, help others, take care of others, do all those generous acts and philanthropy which helps the poor segments of society.
So, sir, I'm sorry I'm interjecting here, but in this spirit of simplicity, so my sources are telling me, very close sources, that you did shopping, right? Eid shopping. So how much simplicity did you incorporate in that shopping aspect of it?
Yes, exactly. I mean, you're absolutely correct.
Yes.
The thing is, Amin Sahab rightly said, we are in a mad race for branded suits, right? Go to any mall
So
in
did you
Pakistan.
shop from the simple, like,
You see,
local market out there?
you see, the thing is, I mean, I will tell you a very good example. I spent almost all my life in Islamabad. I do remember Eid Ul Adha was supposed to be an Eid without getting new clothes stitched or bought new dresses. Everyone was supposed to have a new dress on Eid Ul Fitr. Eid Ul Adha was dedicated to the purchase of animal because people had less means. At the same time, they had a spirit to share their resources with their neighbors, with their family members around them. What is happening these days? People are moving out in expensive Land Cruisers, where their own relatives, the people around them, they are suffering a lot. They are leading a miserable life. So, Islam, I would again repeat, Islam is a very modern religion. It says, follow the faith. Faith says, you pray 5 times, do not tell lies, do not cheat on others, do not, for example, snatch others' rights. Buy, whatever simple you can buy. Lead a very simple life. Do not deprive others of their rights even on roads. If you are in queue, do not jump over the queues. Let people follow the queue. If you are doing sacrifice, do that silently. Even your neighbors should not know that you have purchased a goat of, say, 150,000. Do not tell others you have bought a bull worthy, like Roma said, 300,000 rupees. These are supposed to be your internal acts. The time you tell people the price, the intent you have got inside,
I think you have brilliantly...
that loses spirituality. Your sacrifice becomes meaningless in the eyes of God. We have lost the meaning of sacrifice. Sacrifice is supposed to be selfless. Sacrifice is supposed to be away from telling others what you have done. You know, sacrifice needs to take care of others. Sacrifice is to distribute the meat, whatever comes to you. Do not reserve thighs of goats for yourself.
Yeah.
Please put them, in the whole meat and distribute them. Do make 3 portions of whatever you have sacrificed. 1 for yourself, 1 for your relatives, 1 for poor. That's what we are doing.
That's correct. I absolutely agree with you, sir. Now, Roma, moving on to you. Of course, you must have done your Eid shopping, first of all. Have you? You have, right.
Of course, it's the third day of the Eid.
Third day of the Eid,
Yes,
right?
yes.
All right. One question that does come to my mind, and I really get excited whenever I speak to a psychologist, because there's so many unanswered questions, right? Often I've seen in this era parents telling their children, please don't watch it, it's going to be very traumatic for you. Please don't watch the sacrifice being done. Although being a child myself back then, I was encouraged to watch it, right? It's sawab, it's being done for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
So is it so in your practice?
Okay, so the thing is that we all have different experiences, okay? So, and we do have different calibers, different mindsets. Now, for someone who is, let's say, 5 years old, if you're going to expose them to blood and seeing that torture, religiously, like I said, it's something that is encouraged, but the mental health aspects of that thing, they do sometimes tend to be with you for a long time.
Right.
And they do turn into different mental health conditions. As bad as OCD
as long as
well.
we do not regulate our emotions, right? So if you
Yes.
are telling your child that this is we are doing in the way of Allah, right?
Yes.
So that's a way of regulating that, right?
And
So
I think there has to be a certain age to do that, because up till age 5 and 6, children observe and they copy things. It's called observational learning. They do what they see, they do it. And there are events where they have seen doing that, and then, you know, on a different day, they would not slaughter, but use a knife on the cat's, maybe the cat's neck or maybe a younger sibling's neck. And obviously that's dangerous. We don't want that. So having that said, I think it's important to psychoeducate the kids, that even though if they watch it, if they see it happening, you have to educate them. You have to tell them that this is the reason behind it, and that's, you know,
but then again,
that's it.
Roma, I think the parents need to be educated first.
Yes, that's the thing. That's true.
Now, Amin Kunjai Saab, now let's move to you. So, do you generally enjoy Eid shopping? Because I mean, generally, what I see with the men is that they do not have a very variety of colors. I mean, if someone wants to, then they can have, but usually I do see, you know, plenty of
Actually,
whites
in this
and
era,
blacks
people are moving towards very vibrant colors, even some colors which are not acceptable, but they are moving towards that.
True.
Well, Khatija. Hajra, sorry. Actually, Hajra, it's very nice you asked me. Actually, one thing I told you, we are talking about our religion. Our religion is a nature-bounded religion.
Close to nature, yes.
Yes, it's a very close to nature, and it's not very difficult to do our
Religious practices.
religious practices.
Yeah.
Some people make it difficult, or some groups are make these things difficult. Otherwise, our religion is a very, very comfortable and one of the best. But it's a very bad luck that we were born in a Muslim family. Just that's why we call us a Muslim.
We
don't
never did the research,
research,
never delved into
and
it.
we have
We never
nothing,
learned it, right?
Yeah.
nothing know about the values of our religious Islam. Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, never throw your fruits to the your outside the door, because your neighbor can be maybe have the enough money to buy for his children's these fruits. Be careful like this. And you're talking about purchasing for Eid. Well, it's when we were children and we live in our village, in a whole year we have got 2 suits. One in Eid al-Fitr and one pair of shoes
Okay.
at that time.
Interesting.
And we are very excited and very hilarious, and we take these clothes and our shoes. It's my own experience which I am sharing here. I took my pair of shoes to my bedside, and I'm very excited.
And thank you so much for saying that, because I do remember when I was growing up, so buying things used to bring joy, because there
Yes,
was
of
not
course.
that much money. You have to
Money.
earn for
Yes.
it. There were limited resources.
resources,
And now we have so much, I mean, abundance of money, you know, mass production and all of these things. They don't bring us the joy, right?
Because every day, every few months, we have announcements. Blah brand came as a new thing.
True, and there's a sale, there is that,
sale,
yes.
and we will go to and buy it. We have no joy left in this
Consumer society,
yes,
yes.
of course. And one thing I also asked to all, and Roma is a psychologist, and she knows much more better than us. Just educate our children to how to practice the Islam and the Muslim values.
True.
That
This is
true.
the main true sense. We forget it and this is I think we are also responsible, because being a parents, we brought the gadgets like mobiles and tabs to our just 1-year-old
1
child.
or 2-year-old,
Yeah.
exactly.
And every mother is saying, oh, he's very crying, and take it and go for you cocoa melon and so and so. What a nonsense, yaar. This is not our society. All positive things take from Islam to the West, and they are practicing.
They're practicing.
And they are making miracles with these practicing, and we are just doing on tasbih.
Right, right. So thank you so much for saying that, and I think we reiterated this point before, that there is a blend of modernism in the Islam, and that is something that is very concerning. So Roma, as a woman, and when I was growing up, so we used to remember that we used to gather at a dadi's place. That was the center of the gravity. And before the Eid, the Chandrat, we used to have this, mehndi, churiyan, and there was one baji or the eldest cousin. She was very good at mehndi and henna. But I just don't see that trend anymore, right? So women usually flock to parlors to get that henna done, right? So generally, how was your Eid when you were growing up, and how did you see a shift when, as a mother now, when you celebrate?
So just like you said, well, there is a huge shift, and I think that's more because of the limited time that we have. I think it's because we're so occupied with other things that when we need to sort of do something for ourselves, we just want to go to the beautician and hand it over to her. But for some reason, I still have that traditional mindset that, during Eid, it should be sort of like a huge get-together on Chandrat where everyone can have, sit together, and the girls doing mehndi and the boys doing their things. I think it brings the whole festivity back to the occasion. And at least I try to keep that going in different ways, in sort of doing mehndi and sort of sorting out the churiyan for the next day and the clothes and everything. So yeah, at least I try to do that. But again, I think why many people, especially the ladies, can't do that is because of the time. It's we are so much occupied with other things that we hardly get time for ourselves.
True. That's true. That's very true, and thank you so much for pointing this out. And I think there were some bittersweet moments, and we used to enjoy a lot of things that we used to do back in our days when we were growing up, and Eid had its own special air, atmosphere of festivity and celebration, and the joy of wearing new clothes and new shoes and whatever that we have to do it to celebrate that Eid.
And being children, even the joy of getting Eid, whether it is Choti Eid or Badi Eid, where perhaps I have to end the conversation. And before I thank all of you, I mean, how do you, this time, what special are you going to do in order to make it more exemplary for the others? Because obviously we do talk about it, we do talk about a utopian world, a utopian life. How can we strive towards it?
I'm going to tell my children and the society that we have not stopped giving sacrifices. Gaza, Rafah are giving sacrifices. We have lost almost 37,000 precious lives, and we should not forget them, right? Eid Ul Adha is the name of, we celebrate Eid Ul Adha because of sacrifice,
True.
Sacrifice is connected these days with the unprecedented loss of life, right? Muslims are suffering a lot. We really have to ask Allah for the end of their sufferings. Whatever we have got, we have to share our resources with those who are at the edge of death, who have nothing to eat, who have nothing to pass their lives.
And thank you so much for saying that, and I think we would like to wrap up our segment by expressing our solidarity with the people or Muslims who are suffering oppression under the brutal regime of Israel and the brutal regime of India in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And once again, we express our solidarity to all our brethren or the unsung heroes who are performing their duties, be it on the borders or maybe for that matter, I think in the hospitals, because they're away from their families, preferring their profession because it is a requirement of their job to do their job rather than celebrating that. So with that, we will say thank you to all of our guests for coming here, for celebrating Eid with us. With that, we are once again want to say Eid Mubarak to everyone who is out there. And until next time, it's a goodbye and Allah Hafiz.
Allah.